Good evening and welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix daily price change predictions video. My name is FPL Nacho and this is the series where we discuss potential FPL price changes to help you build that essential team value. Now, of course, this video is coming out after the Friday deadline, so we do not have any information to go by in game week 9. So in this video, we're going to be looking more ahead to game week 10 and onwards and looking at some of the players that are potentially rising or falling in price, and having an eye ahead of game week 10 on whether they should be assets you should be considering, because the market is very active tonight. So there are a lot of players that could be out of reach beyond tonight. So be sure to keep an eye on the price predictor over at fantasyfootballfix.com. So without further ado, let's have a look at tonight's potential FPL price changes. Right guys, so as always with these videos, you can see the potential price rises and fallers on the graphics around me here, which is a brilliant addition to the Fantasy Football Fix channel. And it's worth noting that, of course, last night both Jamie Vardy and Lukaku both price change. Of course, Vardy going up and Lukaku falling in price. And it's worth noting that tonight we have both of these players changing in price again. Of course, Vardy looking at rising in price once more and Lukaku falling in price. So really, guys, the market is going crazy right now and managers are really going hard on these two players in particular. So as I mentioned, it's looking like a double price rise for Vardy and a double price fall for Lukaku ahead of Friday night. So that is worth noting, guys. Of course, you might have already gone and invested in these players, but if you haven't already, there could be a double price rise imminent. So first up, guys, I want to bring up the fixture analyzer over the next 5 league matches. As I mentioned, recording this, we have no information of game week 9. So some of this is going to be a bit assumptive, but obviously a lot of managers are right now targeting Chelsea attackers, Kai Havertz in particular being a very popular transfer in. And of course, we're not to know what is going to happen in that Norwich fixture, but it is worth noting that whatever result does happen in that Norwich fixture, the long-term perspective of Chelsea is still very good from an attacking perspective. Newcastle, Burnley, Leicester, Man United and Watford in the next 5. Now, of course, Leicester, Man United can be tricky fixtures, but with the likes of Newcastle, Burnley and Watford, whatever the outcome is in game week 9, it's worth saying that the attacking assets that you do own in the Chelsea team should be longer term holds rather than just the short term aspect of Norwich at home. Now, of course, if you did bring in Kai Havertz with that potential injury to Lukaku being a bit longer term, he could be an asset that might need to be sold in the future. But right now, if he is getting game time, he is a definite hold with these upcoming fixtures. And of course, we can adapt once we know more news on Lukaku. But interesting one right now is going to be Arsenal second on our fixture ticket. Now, as we mentioned, Leicester is a tricky game sometimes, and of course they've got Liverpool amongst that. But with Watford and Newcastle, two unbelievable home fixtures for them, it really does make their assets really appealing. Now, of course, the injury to Saka, again, not too sure if he's starting in game week 9, but somebody else I want to touch on is Aubameyang, who has gone quietly under the radar, 3 goals so far this season, his last 5, I believe, and he's slowly ticking over. The only problem is when you compare him to the likes of Jamie Vardy, it's very hard to justify going into somebody like Aubameyang. But Chelsea and Arsenal over the coming game weeks are definitely assets that we should be looking to target going forward. And what I want to do now, guys, is just deep dive on a few players who are potentially price changing and with an eye to the future on whether you should own them. Right guys, as I mentioned, with no data from game week 9, filming this video off the back of the Arsenal game, very unsure what has happened in that game. However, I really do think that we want to go a bit curveball here, and I want to be looking at a bit of a differential, because all the talk has been about Lukaku, Harry Kane, Jamie Vardy, Havertz, and of course, guys, if you want to watch back our previous videos, we have gone into detail about these players. So to avoid repetition, I want to throw a bit of a curveball into the game, and it is going to be Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Now, a lot of managers have been going away from Lukaku to Jamie Vardy to Harry Kane, even down into someone like Tony, but really somebody who has not had much conversation until recently has been Aubameyang of Arsenal. Now, as we mentioned with the attack fixture difficulty, Arsenal are currently second best over the next 5 league matches. Of course, a couple of difficult games in there, but 2 of their home fixtures are brilliant, and he really does look like he could be an amazing differential for some managers. Now, it's worth mentioning Aubameyang and Kane hovering around similar ownership, so the selling point of being a differential for Aubameyang isn't really the case when we compare the two. But Right now, Aubameyang is leading the way in FPL points, 31 in comparison to Harry Kane's 21. And it's worth noting he's played slightly less minutes as well against Harry Kane. 7 bonus points for Aubameyang in comparison to Harry Kane's 3. So it begs the question, why are we not talking more about Aubameyang as a potential differential, and also being 2.5 roughly million cheaper would really open up the doors to other assets in your team, especially if you wanted to bring in the likes of Son in midfield, and that extra saving could really help justify that cause as a future transfer. But when we come down into the touch map here, we can see that neither touch map is necessarily joyous to look at. Both players have been operating in the middle third of the pitch, really not getting enough touches in the box that you want to see from assets which you're looking to bring in as a potential medium to premium asset. So of course, the touch maps here aren't exactly blowing us away. But what I do like about Aubameyang is the pedigree and track record that he has had. Now, of course, last season was a little bit difficult for him, but I do like him as a bit of a maverick pick if managers are looking in a ranked position where they're currently sitting and not happy with it. If they want to go a bit different, I really do think Aubameyang could be a brilliant alternative to the other assets. And I wouldn't necessarily say with the touch map here that Harry Kane is miles above Aubameyang in terms of positioning on the pitch. And when we come down to the stats here, I want to come down all the way to minutes per 90, statistics per 90 here. And this is where it gets very interesting. As we mentioned, Harry Kane has had a really poor start to the season. And goals 0.52 per 90 in comparison to Harry Kane's 0.16. Expected goals identical, 0.33. And as we mentioned, the shots very, very similar as well, 2.59 in comparison to Harry Kane's 2.74. And shots on target, Harry Kane slightly leading the way here. But again, as we mentioned, positional shots in the box, 1.9 for Aubameyang in comparison to Harry Kane's 1.29. So guys, what am I trying to get here? I'm not telling anybody to necessarily get Aubameyang. I don't think he's necessarily the best option. I still think the likes of Jamie Vardy is a better pick, and probably Harry Kane, just because you could probably put the captaincy on him and justify it with the future fixtures coming up. However, if managers are sat there right now on a rank that they're really not happy with and they want to go real differential with really good fixtures coming up, especially home fixtures, I really think Aubameyang could serve a purpose in those teams. And if you have the money available as a differential option, I think Aubameyang is going to be a very shrewd pick over the next 5 league matches. Okay guys, as I mentioned, of course, the popular players like Jamie Vardy, Lukaku, Havertz are stealing the headlines. But as we mentioned, we have discussed in great detail about these players. So I want to bring a bit of a differential touch to this video. And the reason why we currently have Edouard on the screen is that I do think that he is a potential differential over the next 5 or 6 league matches. And I've bet him against Ivan Toney, mainly because of the popularity Ivan Toney has had over the last few game weeks due to his performances for Brentford as a team, and of course Brentford's upcoming fixture. So I really think this is a very good comparison. Both are very similar priced, and of course Ivan Toney get much more of the headlines in comparison to Odesan Edouard. Now, of course, a big factor for Edouard not getting much love is of course the minutes that he's had, 272 in comparison to Toney's 720. But when we look at the points here, 33 for Toney and 24 for Edouard. So although the minutes have been so much different, the points are still very, very close there, and both having 4 bonus points already shows that they're both decent options. And the big thing there, points per game, 4.8 for Edouard in comparison to Toney's 4.1. So of course, there's 2 ways to look at this. Edouard, an explosive asset who is currently keeping up with Toney in some aspect, but the other hand is he a rotation risk, and is he a problem in your teams if you were to target him at 6.5 million? So when we come down here to the touch maps again, we're getting a lot more data with Ivan Toney naturally because he's played so many more minutes. We're getting a lot more of an understanding where he operates in this Brentford team. But from an eye test perspective, we know that, of course, he's on set pieces, but he's very much integral to linking up the play. And Mbeumo is probably the one that gets beyond the defence as opposed to Ivan Toney. Edouard, on the other hand, again, very, very small sample size to judge off on this touch heat map. But what we can see here is plenty of touches in and around the box, which we really do want to see. And it's worth mentioning as well, Crystal Palace, off the back of that 2-2 against Arsenal, are really starting to build a very, very creative side. Something very different to what we saw under Roy Hodgson, with the likes of Zaha, Olise, Conor Gallagher, and even Eze to come back into the team. They have a lot more creativity around these assets. If Edouard can justify himself as the #1 striker in that team, then he could be a very, very good option going forward because of the creativity that is around him. He isn't going to be in a stale team full of non-performing assets. Now, again, as we look at the stats here, we can see that Edouard's had 9 shots in comparison to Tony's 18 and 6 attempted assists in comparison to Tony's 11. So again, Tony is leading the way here, but what we would expect from somebody who's played almost triple the minutes of Edouard. And I think the main statistic here to really get a good idea on how they both balance against one another is to come down to the average statistics per 90. Now, of course, Edouard is coming off the bench, playing different minutes. It's a bit more difficult to judge whether these stats are actually going to be long-term averages for him. Again, with a 0.99 goals per 90, we're not going to say that is going to be sustainable going forward in the long run, but 0.99 per 90 is brilliant to see. And of course, Tony with 0.25, still some good underlying stats there, but really with that Edouard is very, very interesting to see. And again, the expected goals 0.41 per 90 in comparison to Tony's 0.23. So again, underlying stats are definitely back in Edouard's case here. And again, shots on target 1.65 per 90, shots in the box 2.32 per 90. So really what I like to see with Edouard, and in particular, the underlying stats have been excellent, and the games that they have played against some big teams, the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, the upcoming fixtures are brilliant for Crystal Palace, with Newcastle at home, a tricky game week 10 fixture against Man City, but then Wolves, Burnley, Aston Villa, Leeds, to name a few in their coming game weeks. And although I do think Ivan Toney, if you had to pick one of them, he would be the pick because of his guaranteed game time, because of his set pieces, and playing in a Brentford team who are in good form. But I really do think, again, similar to the Aubameyang pick, if you want to go a bit differential, a bit off-piste in your FPL picks, I think going against the grain and going with someone like Edouard, if you hedge your bet that he is going to be the starting striker in that team, I really do think that he could be a brilliant differential option over the coming game weeks. Right guys, that is going to draw an end to today's Fantasy Football Fix daily price change predictions video. I hope you guys have enjoyed a little bit of the different angle that I went with on this one. Of course, for those regular watchers, know that we have been banging the drum for plenty of videos now in regards to Lukaku, Vardy, Harry Kane. So I thought it was a bit nice to go a bit differential. And of course, with Game Week 9 deadline passed, we have none of the information for Game Week 9. So we can now look ahead to Game Week 10 onwards and a few differentials that might help improve that overall rank over the coming game weeks. And of course, guys, all the information is taken from fantasyfootballfix.com, the leading FPL platform. So be sure to head over there, check out our price predictor, and of course, check out the other tools available to help improve that rank and win those mini leagues. Link in the bio. And of course, guys, I want to say a big shout out for tuning into this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button and smash that subscribe button. And of course, with us dropping daily videos, you don't want to be missing a thing, so hit that notification bell. And as always, guys, have a great game week, and we will see you same time tomorrow. Cheers.